2-minute warning, folks, 2-minute warning. Counselors, we're not starting. Counselors, we're not going to start just yet. We're not going to call into session, but Ms. Call needs to explain the conditions we're going to be operating on once I convene us. Ms. Call, won't you explain our situation?
Well, Jeff, wherever you're at, feel free to jump in. They had a power outage on this side of the building today here, so we've been slowly getting things back up and running. We do have power now. We do have intranet now. We do have the ability to live stream with audio. We do have audio. What we don't have, as you can see, are your monitors and the screens. So we're going old school today. So we're doing manual voting, hence the copy of your PowerPoints. And also you guys have, all of you have a copy of the agenda in full packet. Everybody good? Anybody need anything?
Any questions for Ms. Call?
Any questions? Nothing?
All right.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
We are 1 minute away. Don't laugh, Counselor Best. It just encourages bad behavior on his part.
That is my whole MO.
That's frightening a number of people. Please don't do that.
Today's only a clockwise, not a counter.
Oh, look, it's 6 o'clock. I'm calling the September 3rd, 2020 special meeting of the Roswell City Council to order. Ms. Call, please call the roll.
Counselor Peterson's absent. Counselor Perry.
Here.
Counselor Robeck.
Here.
Counselor Moore.
Here.
Counselor Best.
Here.
Counselor Stubbs.
Here.
Counselor Kennard.
Here.
Counselor Sanchez.
Here.
Counselor Foster.
Here.
Counselor Oropesa.
Here.
Mayor Kintai. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, I will call upon Counselor Stubbs. Counselor Stubbs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve the special meeting amended agenda of the City of Roswell for this Thursday, September 3rd, 2020.
I have a motion by Counselor Stubbs and a second by Counselor Perry to approve the amended agenda as presented. Any discussion or debate on the amended agenda? Hearing none, seeing none, I'll ask for a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, passes 9-0. First item up is some quick announcement. I will be brief. Most of you have already been aware of the discussions that have occurred between the city staff, with myself present, and American Airlines. 2 weeks and 1 day ago, Mr. Stark called me at home on a Wednesday evening and informed me he had gotten word from American Airlines that our air service between Dallas and Roswell would be suspended for the month of October. Previously, our Phoenix flights were suspended because of the COVID pandemic in April. They have not resumed yet. That phone call from Mr. Stark started a series of meetings and calls. We conferred with our consultant, Jeffrey Hertz of Mead and Hunt. They are our air service consultants. They were able to arrange a telephonic meeting or conference call on Tuesday, the following Tuesday, and that participants included Mr. Mike Matthews, Mr. Juan Fuentes, Ms. Juanita Jennings, Mr. Scott Stark, myself, and am I forgetting anyone? Mr. Stark? All right. We had a conversation with the Vice President of American Airlines for network planning. The discussion was on the situation that American is facing because of the collapse in demand for air travel. American, as you may have seen in the news media, is laying off 19,000 employees. As we got into the conversation, it became aware that this is a financial decision. In part, it's also a political decision. We'll be candid with you. In my estimation, American Airlines is attempting to put pressure on Congress and the administration to pass some type of relief because the current relief for the airlines ends September 30th. We did discuss the possibility of doing some type of financial support for American Airlines, and we discussed some general numbers, and actually the most interesting response I got from the American Airline official was that if we were to waive parking fees, that would be considered toward or count towards any kind of financial support to continue the air service. That's a significant number. It's about $53,000 a month for American Airlines. And so we were discussing the options here. Any kind of serious package would come to this body for approval, as you all understand. The next day, we were actually meeting with the county commission and staff to discuss enhanced participation by the county in any kind of revenue support program when I got a second call from the same vice president for network planning. And the reason why I don't use his name is I have no idea how to pronounce it, and I can't even spell it. It starts with a Z, and the second letter is a consonant. So we'll leave it at that. He informed me that American Airlines would not be suspending air service for the city of Roswell. Now, in the original public announcement that came out in the previous Thursday, there were 15 cities listed. As far as I am aware, we are the only one of the 15 that will not have their service interrupted. I want to take special note of the work Mr. Mike Matthews did. He reached out to FLETC and through them, Department of Homeland Security, to explain to American Airlines the interest that the Department of Homeland Security has in being able to move personnel easily and quickly into and out of the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Artesia. I also believe that there was some significant input from the American maintenance personnel. That's more speculation than anything else. And I think our willingness to have a serious discussion on revenue support helped us. We will continue to have discussions. American is hoping, as are the other airlines, that Congress and the administration will reach an agreement and enact something that would preclude the need for any kind of local financial support. I think this service is critical to the well-being of our community and our region, and we will be working with staff to try and make sure that that continues to happen. This body will be the final decision makers on any kind of extensive agreement. You are the elected representatives of the people, and so anything will come to this body. And I can answer any questions on this if you'd like, or we can discuss it afterwards in groups or individually. Councilor Roebuck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Definitely, I think this community has come to depend on air service, and I'm glad that our staff and the mayor and others took quick action to make sure that we don't lose that. And I think if we can continue to work on that, and also too, I would just encourage staff to keep working as well as what can we do to get Phoenix back up and running, because I imagine that my understanding, and again, I'm not an expert, but based on what I understand is, those flights are both profitable, and I think it really sets us apart from other cities of our size. As remote as we are, we need that to be able to say, hey, we are connected that way. So I appreciate that, and I hope that the citizens of Roswell see the commitment of the city of Roswell to make sure that we don't lose commercial air service to our community. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Like I said, I'm available for any of you wishing to discuss this with me in private or in small groups. Otherwise, let's move on to item number 3. Item number 3, I'll call on Councilor Stubbs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to make a motion, knowing that we'll probably have to amend this, but I move that we approve Resolution 20-50, authorizing the mayor to submit the 2022 through 2026 5-year infrastructure capital improvement plan with, I didn't change it, with the State of New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration Local Governments Division.
I have a motion by Councilor Stubbs and a second by Councilor Moore to approve Resolution 20-50. Mr. Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors. I've presented this PowerPoint, which is in your desk due to the glitches we're having with the system. But I know I've presented this PowerPoint. I'm just going to go over some of the major highlights. So since we kind of already covered some of these projects and the resolution, but just for the benefit of anybody who might be listening to us by the public, just kind of want to highlight the reason why we're doing this and the need for the Infrastructure Capital Improvement Plan, the ICIP. So the ICIP is required by the state of New Mexico of all of the communities. It is a plan that establishes planning priorities for anticipated capital projects for a 5-year window that is updated every year. This plan assists legislators to prioritize and appropriate legislative funding every January, every legislative session to the communities for their top projects. The ICIP may be covered as a full project or as a phasing part of a project. The resolution that's being presented to the council, as we did last year, it is proposing to identify the top 5 projects that will be included for funding as well as in the resolution. So moving on to the next slide, as we did last year in fiscal year 20, as you can see there, last year we had our top 5 as being the all-inclusive park, the Little League fields, the bridge, tennis court, and the road rehabilitation project. Out of those 5, 4 of them were funded when the legislators met the first time around. Due to the COVID, the 2 of those projects were vetoed for funding. That was the bridge 6090 replacement at $595,000, and as well as the tennis court upgrades. Those 2 projects were vetoed. The other projects were funded at 1.4 for the all-inclusive, and the Little League fields for $850,000. So moving on to the next slide, as you can see, on the next couple of slides, what you see there is what you see in the back wall of all of the projects that have been identified as the top priority projects when all of these departments presented before the different committees. As you can see, we start with the Air Center, going into the Infrastructure Committee, General Services, going into Public Safety, and then Finance. So all of those projects, which are make up at about $37 million worth of projects, is what is before you that is being presented. In the fiscal year 21 final budget, some of the projects that were included in the list of priority projects have already been funded. And some of those include like the dispatch project at $420,000, the library roof at $170,000, and then the library building repairs, which is part of that funding gap that the council authorized to fund with anything that was not covered by the insurance from the water damage. And of course, the CDBG additional matching funds. Those were already included in the final budget. So what you have, again, is the resolution. Again, we have to, pursuant to the ICIP guidelines, prioritize them. We have listed here 54 projects. The funding need, as I mentioned, is about $37 million. Once upon approval of the ICIP resolution, we are required to submit this information to the DFA website under the ICIP portal. And the date of submission that is due to the state is September 18th. With that, Mr. Mayor, Council, I'll turn it over to Joe.
Mr. Neb.
All right, Mayor, City Council, we're going to break from protocol tonight and have a little bit of fun.
Is that what we call it?
Yeah. And the protocol is not that we don't have fun all the time, but we've got there's a exercise here. But as you've heard, the ICIP is a listing of projects that are identified for state legislative assistance. That doesn't mean that these are the only projects that we'll be doing next year or in the future years. These are the projects that are allowed, any money that comes from the state allows for that ability for assistance from those funds. So there's projects out at the Air Center that is federally funded that doesn't go through this process. There's other projects out there. So federal funds can come directly to the community, but if they flow through the state, they should be on this list. From the city's master project list, 54 projects have been selected through the committees as top priorities. The list includes 37, and I would say $500,000, 37,500,000, and every project on the list is a good project. Over the past few years, the city of Roswell has received somewhere between $2.5 to $3.5 million per year of legislative assistance. So understand that we have $37.5 million worth of projects up there, and we receive somewhere between $2.5 to $3.5 million. So that's the scope of what we're working on here. In order to prioritize these projects into the top 5 lists, we have prepared a prioritization exercise to whittle the list down. But first, I would ask the mayor and city council if there are any other projects that are of personal importance to you to add to the list. And Mayor, I don't know how you would like to do that, but if there is any project from any city councilor that you would like to be considered on this list, now would be the time that we would add that to it. And I believe Mr. Morris is ready. And so if you'd like to go down the list, I guess you could learn who gets to go first based upon the votes.
We could. Why don't you, Ms. Call, why don't we call the roll, and each counselor can say if they want to add any projects or if they're satisfied with the list as presented. Okay, Counselor Best.
Please. I don't mean to get irritated here because this is so much easier than it's been before, but you've brought this to us now, and we have it in our agenda. I've sat 3 days going through this to list them out 1 through 10 because that's the exercise. Then you show up with this saying this is already paid for, already got funding for these particular things you just mentioned. So now I have to sit here quickly and figure out how to move my numbers around now. So to me, this irritates me tremendously because I'm not getting the information I need to have an informed decision. Infuriates me. Now I've got to make a quick decision without thinking. Well, sometimes I think, sometimes I don't. Anyway, so I just want to put that out there. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but now I have 3, 4 different things I've got to pick. So just putting it out there.
All right, thank you.
All right. So going back to additions, this would be, is there any project you want to see added to the existing list, or if you are good with the list as presented? All right, Ms. Call, I'm going to let you call the roll and go down it one at a time.
Counselor Perry?
I have nothing to add. After we're done with this exercise, I do have some questions about what we do currently have, just for clarification.
Okay.
Counselor Roebuck? None. Counselor Moore? None. Counselor Best?
No, ma'am.
Counselor Stubbs? No. Counselor Kennard?
No.
Counselor Sanchez?
Yeah.
Do you have something extra you want to add to the list?
Oh, no.
No. Counselor Foster?
Yes. Under Parks, number 3, to develop and build a park at 2301 South Virginia. And estimate 200,000.
Anything else, Counselor Foster? All right, yeah.
Counselor Oropesa?
Yes. One thing I didn't see in here is the, and I think Mr. Najar noted this morning at the Finance Committee that the project on Atkinson from Second to Cherry was done away with or put on hold. I'm not sure. Can you clarify that for us, please? Or maybe I misunderstood you this morning. I'm not sure.
Mayor, Councilor Oropesa, and council, the second to Cherry Street was on our list for this budget pre-COVID, and it was on the ones that got cut, as we have really no projects with city money this year, except the ones that are funded with leverage money state. So
But we can go ahead and put it on.
you could add it to the list, because it
Well,
was
I wanna add
scheduled to be
that.
done, and it got cut this year. So it had to go be recycled back on my budget and my talks with Joe and finance.
Okay, thank you.
And I appreciate your thoughts and thinking for roads.
Now, is this, let me clarify, are we talking Atkinson or Garden?
Garden, second to Cherry.
Okay,
I thought it was Atkinson from Second to Cherry.
No, Atkinson, second to Cherry is in progress. Oh, okay, we're stealing money, so to speak, or we're borrowing money to pay for the change order, but the project will still proceed, and there'll be a mid-year or budget adjustment to continue with that project. That project is designed. Atkinson, all we're doing is waiting for the DOT saying, here's your stamp, go ahead and bid it. But as was discussed at finance, we're borrowing the $228,000 for the bridge, and then we'll have to come back, and you'll see me again talking about the Atkinson project, trying to put money back in that one, and thank you for the opportunity. Roads is general fund, not an enterprise fund, so any money that I get, you have to approve, and you get to see my face over and over as all these changes occur.
So are we wasting our time by putting it on the list, or?
Yes, sir. It's
Okay.
it's already on the list. It's on the active list to be built.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for your thoughts, Councilor Pesa.
okay, I have one question. You're going to tell me yes, right? That we're not starting Atkinson till Garden is fully open,
Oh,
right?
come on.
I'm paranoid.
No.
Come on.
We're gonna Garden.
Okay.
Garden will be done before we close Atkinson,
All right. Just want to make. Yeah.
and so will Country Club in Maine.
Okay. Yeah, we're not putting it. Okay. Anything else, councilors? Councilors, Mr. Fuentes, yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Councilor Best, I wanted to just clarify, because what's on the, if you look at the slide, some of those projects that council actually took formal action. For example, if we look at the CDBG project, remember that was when the project was awarded. the council did acknowledge that there was some funding that would be covered by additional GRT. And that was when the project was awarded. The other project, the library roof repairs, we did identify when the final budget was being approved that there was room there that we could cover that project. In the library roof and dispatch, even though it wasn't formally acted upon, but those projects were identified because they were, I guess the comments were they were top priority. The statement that is written there at the end of the last sentence on that slide says appropriations to be formalized during the first quarterly budget. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that some of those projects were actually acted upon.
A footnote would have been appreciated, though.
Okay.
That
Thank you.
way, because I've slept since our general service meeting when we did all this till 2 days ago, so.
Okay.
And I'm old, so.
Okay, I understand.
Memory escapes me, and I'm not in it 24/7 like you, so just a footnote saying, down at the bottom, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Are we at the point to begin our process?
We are. So for this, and I'll call it by rounds because if we need to come up with a top 5 of this. So each city councilor will receive 10 stickers to place on the project sheets in the back of the room that meet their individual prioritization. Once completed, we'll consider the projects with the most stickers as the top 5 for the resolution. At that point in time, if you wish to make any amendments or changes to those projects, you're entitled to do that as a city council, but we'll take action. So we are trying to establish a top 5 of that. And just be aware that for the additional projects, the city council can decide to include all of the projects on this list, all 52 of them, whether they received a sticker or not, as the attachment on the backside of this resolution. So that gives us about 50 projects. It'll give us 54 projects in this list, 5 of the top 5, and then the rest, because they all become eligible for that legislative assistance. So we always build a larger list than just the top 5 is how we've done that in the past. So I believe Ms. Call has the stickers.
And they can put multiple stickers.
Yes, sir. You can take all your stickers and put it on one project if you wish, or spread them out.
Okay, so that's,
We're looking for the top 5 is all we're looking for.
and you will have a total of 10 stickers? All right. So, Ms. Call, who's up first? Oh, we're going to pass out the stickers first.
Sharon, would you like
Counselor
to-
Perry.
I do still have questions I'd like to
Okay.
have answered.
Before we start, Counselor Perry, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Joe, I don't know who to direct this to, but I do have some questions that maybe could be answered by either you or someone you would direct to answer. I'd like to know, in the engineering, solid waste, water, wastewater, in those particular, I'd like for them to identify the most critical in those, also from IT as well.
And Mr. Sanchez, can you help with that?
I'm a firm believer, and I'll just say this from the start for council, I don't know if it's a benefit.
And
Let it go
before he responds to that, if there's any other, we have department heads here in the room, so if you have any questions on any of the projects, please ask, because we have people in the room that can answer those. So,
As he's getting that information together, what I was saying is that I believe it's critical for ICIP to have top priorities in infrastructure and safety, which is what I believe is the main responsibilities of municipality. So I just want to hear from maybe from these projects what our staff believe is most critical in those areas.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors. In my opinion, on the projects for the water side, would be the VFDs, the variable frequency drives. That's critical to the infrastructure. What the variable frequency drives do is they ramp up the wells very slowly so it doesn't hammer the system, and it stops shock to the system. It'll stop a lot of damage to the infrastructure because we have old infrastructure, old water lines. And also whenever they shut down, they ramp down slowly. So right now the wells kick on and it really jolts. They jump, and then you can imagine the shock that that puts to the system. So that's a very critical part of improving the infrastructure, and we're getting them on several wells. We're getting a lot less main breaks and everything from the VFDs that we do have installed, so it's significantly improving the system. It's stopping a lot of damage to the system. And that's just to the pipes, and then, you know, when they blow out driveways, streets, everything else along with it. So.
And is that something that could be partially funded and you could progressively put more in, or are you needing the full 1.4 to do
No,
that?
we could partially fund it.
Okay.
We've been working on them slowly, you know, and we could do a couple versus, we're trying to do about 4 at a time.
Okay.
So that includes the rehab of the well, all the casings, putting the VFDs on there. We're having to improve the buildings, a lot of electrical work. So, but yes, sir, it could be phased in.
Okay.
And then also, including that, another one I'd like to do is just large diameter valves on, replace Third and Orchard.
Say that one more time.
The large diameter water valves, it's on the
Yes.
water distribution side right there. And it says replace valve at Orchard and Third.
Yes.
We have a broken 16-inch line right there that got broken during the garden project, and now it's a dead-end line, and we worked through a loop system. And we need to get that replaced to keep the circulation going, up the pressures in the area, and that'll help us on our pressure air relief. That's another deal that we were requesting, to replace some air reliefs behind Roswell Livestock in the Hondo. That'll be the last phase of air relief valves that we have in the city. We've upgraded all the rest of them. That'll be the final one that we have to get done. But if we do the valve on Third Orchard, that'll require some line stops to be installed in order to isolate that portion.
Okay. What, is there anything else you have to add?
No, sir, that's a priority. I mean, they're all priority in my eyes, you know that.
I understand.
But yes, that would be my priority of getting all the best bang for our buck.
Okay. And if I could hear maybe with the IT requests here, just a little bit more.
Are you referring to a specific one, or?
My question is, you've got the consolidated dispatch and the workstation replacement. If you could just help me understand a little bit about what the consolidated dispatch is and the criticalness of that.
That's the radio project we're trying to complete. We have had like $1.4 million in grants. You guys approved a 460,000-ish purchase last year, and we lack about a 420,000 to finish the job. So right now we're kind of at a standstill because we haven't spent that first $460,000 because we're waiting so we don't purchase equipment and it sits there in a tower site for a year and lose warranty on it. So that's kind of holding, but the key is the networking between them, the microwave to join all the sites together.
Okay.
So that's the biggest one. That's my biggest concern. The workstations is a yearly deal we tried to redo every year to keep new workstations out there so we don't end up in the mess like we were before where everybody's working off of old computers. We're pretty good on that. But like I said, my biggest concern is just the radio. That really needs to be
All right.
completed.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
And just a few more, if I may, Joe, is there someone here who can tell me a little bit about the, where we are with the self-contained breathing apparatus with the fire department, or
All right, I'll tell you what I can, and, Mr. Matthews would be a little bit closer to that, but we're gonna let him take his day off. My understanding with the SCBA's is that there is a number of them that we replace every year. And I think we had not replaced a few here recently because of the cost. And so this is the self-contained breathing apparatuses that they wear into the fires. And at 900,000, I believe, is that half? That is all of them. That is, our interim chief believes that that is all of the SCBA's for replacement. And most of them are 20 years old. Those questions I can't answer. Yeah, I knew you could.
Okay, and just, see, these are things I like to hear because there again, I believe this is in the nature of what we need to do to,
Yeah.
so, okay, and then I guess last but not least, I'd like to ask on the, for the police department, on the renovations, what are we hoping to get with the 400,000 there?
Okay, the renovation on Second Street Station. Second Street building is the old National Guard building that we are converting from, or is this which Second Street? This is the one out there that we're converting, is it not? Yes, it is. All right, West Second Street. This is the old National Guard building that we are converting over into evidence storage, drug task force, and a few other services for the police department. So it was utilized by the facilities maintenance crews, and now we're converting it over, so we have to do additional security for the walls inside so that people cannot climb over, and just bringing it up to a standard so that it can be utilized by the police department rather than what it had been used for before.
And could maybe you or the chief just speak to the point of how critical this is for us to get this?
Would you like to speak on how critical this is?
Good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor. This is critical. This has become critical since the introduction of House Bill 560, which is the new forfeiture law, which impacts property storage, evidence, and what it is we're just filled to the gills. We're a busy city, and that particular law made it difficult to destroy property or move it along without the influence of the state. Anyways, this will relieve a lot of pressures, and we'll also take advantage of having that new building by moving our task force over there, and we'll also put our technical services unit all under one roof. They're all uniquely tied together. So yes, it's because of that law, and it's 2015, I believe, is when it was put in place. And yeah, it's caused a flow of materials that we need to store. We're compelled to store this material as well.
Okay, I just wanted to better understand that and allow council the opportunity to hear, because of changes in Santa Fe that trickle down that we are now required to do. It's critical that projects like this, are considered in these situations. So I think I yield. I think that's all the information that I need at this time.
Just one last too. Santa Fe never had provisions to handle the result of this forfeiture law as well. They don't have the storage or anything up there to accept all the property and evidence that this law makes them responsible for. So we as a municipality incur that.
Okay. All right, no other question for Chief. I was pointed out to me, Mr. Nebb, that on the IT consolidated dispatch, that is under the already funded category that Mr. Fuentes talked about. And so, this kind of goes to Councilor Best's earlier point.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Mayor, Councilors, that is correct. Again, as I stated, that is one of the projects, along with the library roof, when we first received, prior to approving the final budget, and we received the GRT coming in higher, that was one of those projects that was mentioned as priority, as well as the roof, to use some of that additional funding to address those two projects. Unfortunately, it just happened after the timing of this ICIP development, and those items kind of, switched over. That's why those are already been identified for funding. The budget adjustment will happen at the next budget adjustment resolution.
Okay, so we can assume that the $420,000 is already funded.
It's already funded by all city dollars. It has been built into the general fund. So depending on when that work gets accomplished, it may, it is eligible for legislative assistance.
That's a good point.
On a
We could still
project,
ask we could still ask for state dollars And
if that's one that you want to keep on the list.
I see. Okay, good point. All right, I have Counselor Foster and then Counselor Stubbs.
All right. Yeah, one thing I wanted to speak to was the solid waste landfill. Are we, this says cell 5 construction. Are we not already using cell 5, or is it,
Adrian, can you talk on that?
have we capped cell 3 and are using 4? That's where the confusion for me is.
Talk on whether or not cell 5 is open and operating and.
Negative, it is not. Cell 5 is actually part of Cell 4, so it's 5A and 5B. It's part of the largest ones you guys ever opened before. So right now it's not active. That's only 4 that's active. 4 is actually going to fold into 5A, and then we're going to open up 5B.
Okay, so
If you have any questions, I can try to answer that for you the best I can.
So this is 5B that we're talking about funding, the 3.5?
This looks like 5A, the entire cell.
Okay. And we have we capped 4, or were you still
No.
using 4? We've capped 3?
4 is in use now.
Okay.
We're closing that up soon, hopefully, and then we're going to merge that into 5. It's kind of misleading. It's actually 5A and 5B because it's so large.
Okay. All right. That's all I needed for that one. The other question I had was for the emergency management plan. Did we not already, I thought we had a grant. Yeah, there's Karen. Thought I saw her. Yes, Karen.
Yes, so we do have a grant, but that's a different plan. That's a hazard mitigation plan. This is a different plan. This is an emergency operations plan, which we have to have in place to be eligible for any federal funding. So we have to update it so often. They both come around about every 3 to 5 years. So you're correct in one instance, we do have a grant, wrong plan.
Wrong plan?
Yes.
Okay. But it was 50,000 too, and that's why it kept.
Yes,
saying to
correct.
me,
It was,
okay.
it was 50,000 and we got a grant for 75% of it, 37.5.
Okay.
And we'll be looking for a grant for this as well, but it's also on the ICIP in case we don't get a grant.
All right, cool. Thank you. All right,
Okay.
I'm done. Thank
All
you.
right, I have Counselor Stubbs, and that exhausts my list. Counselor Stubbs, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Joe, you probably didn't have to get up. I'm gonna make
That's not a problem.
You did a great job today. Thank you. Thank you. I just want to make a statement. I've been cautioned by several legislators, and I think we all know the financial situation that the state is in, and probably not just this year, but the coming year at least. So I just want everyone to know that my choices are going to be sort of low-numbered, no low-expense choices, only because I think it's really important to get a project done instead of phasing some of these larger ones. So I just hope everyone will take into consideration the situation that the state's been in, and I think it's better to be, my personal opinion is it's better to be funded smaller projects than them to pass over the large ones because there's not enough money to go around. Thank you.
All right. If there's any other questions or comments, if not, Ms. Call. All right, Ms. Call, it's your show. You're going to call them up one at a time based upon the,
Mayor, could I suggest maybe taking 2 to 3 at a time and let it move along?
all
a
right,
little bit
let's go with
faster?
them. Let's go with 3 at a time then. All right.
Do you want to go with the, use the voting order and take those
Yeah,
first
let's
3?
go with voting order.
Okay, that would be Counselor Perry, Counselor Roebuck, and Counselor Moore.
Okay.
And then
Perry, Roebuck, and Moore. Perry, Roebuck, and Moore, you have, do we need that Jeopardy music?
Yeah, we do. And as one completes, we'll ask the next one down, and that way we can kind of move this
That'll work.
along and keep
Okay.
it.
No, you have to speak up, Counselor. Try. Holy crap. My battery's down to 17.
Mr. Mayor, Council. Next
Okay,
in
who do we have
line
next?
would be Counselor Best and Counselor Stubbs.
Counselor Best and Counselor Stubbs.
Yes. Oh, yeah. What little I know, I do know very little, I guarantee you.
Oh, yeah.
Counselor Kennard.
Nope, no stickers for the mayor. I don't have a vote.
Oh, you got a happy face. Your wife said you drove your truck down here. I said I was scared of him before he had a stroke in his truck. Good to see you.
Yeah. John.
Who's next?
Counselor Sanchez?
Counselor Sanchez, you're next up there. Ms. Call, who's after Counselor Sanchez?
Counselor Foster?
Foster. And is there anyone, we,
And then
why don't you
Counselor
go ahead and go on
Orpeza's
up,
last.
Counselor Orpeza. Miss Call? Miss Call? Miss Call? Okay. Yeah. Can you, maybe you and Mr. Fuentes can start looking to see what the leading candidates are? Okay. We don't question each other's votes. This is a vote. This is a vote. Okay.
Juanita? We need to.
Okay.
So all three of these are
So, do we have results, Mr. Neb?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's bring it back into order, folks. Counselors, we're back in order.
Yes.
All right, let me get Counselor Perry back up here on the podium. We can resume. Go ahead.
Okay, Mayor, City Council, thank you for all the work. We're going to run down the list. We have the top 5 of these projects. What we will do is we will add those to the resolution, so the resolution will be amended to add the 5. If you choose to change any of those, again, please do it by amendment. And then the other decision that I would like to have from the council is, do we add all 54 of the projects on that? And I see some head shaking. So the first project, and actually we have 3 of them tied for the top. So West 2nd renovation for the police department building. Number 2 is Garden Street project or a bridge project, I'm sorry, for Garden. Number 3 is the variable speed drives for water. Number 4 is the park at Virginia Street. Number 5 is East McGaffey, another street project. That is the top 5 that had the most. I'm sorry?
Repeat those.
Yes, sir. West 2nd Street renovation, police department project. Garden Street bridge, that's an engineering project. Variable speed drives for water production. Park at Virginia Street for parks. East McGaffey is an engineering project for streets.
All right. Counselor Stubbs, you wish to amend your resolution?
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I need you, Joe. I'm going to withdraw my original motion if the seconder will do the same,
Okay.
which I think was Counselor Perry.
No, Counselor Moore.
Thank you. Okay, so I've withdrawn that motion. So, Mr. Chair, I'm going to move.
Counselor Stubbs, I can't hear you.
Because I have to take this off.
Yeah, please.
All right, no, it's okay. Sorry. So I do, okay, we've removed that motion. So I now will move to approve Resolution 20-50, authorizing the mayor to submit the 2022 through 2026 5-year infrastructure capital improvement plan with the State of New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration local government divisions to include, and Joe, you guys will fill those in, or do we?
Are you comfortable, Ms. Call, that you know the sequence? All right, we won't need to
That's great.
repeat them, Counselor.
What?
You won't need to repeat them. She's
Okay.
got them.
Okay, because I didn't write official
Okay.
titles. And then with a very small amendment in the first whereas, in the second line where it says I'm on page 8, capital improvement plan, parentheses, ICIP, including, I'd like the word these to be inserted, including these top 5 priorities.
Okay. Ms. Call, do you understand all right, we now have a substitute substitute resolution. Counselor Moore will second it again. Do we have any discussion, debate on this resolution? Counselor Stubbs.
I'm just curious, you say there were a tie between the first 3?
The first 3 had the same number of votes.
Same
and so,
number.
and I would say that the numbering does not matter that much. It is, I mean, we receive funding for most of those, so if you want to change the order, you can, but.
I just think we ought to be given that opportunity. I don't personally, but
Okay.
thank you.
Any other discussion on the resolution as presented? If not, I will ask
Mr.
for.
Mayor?
Counselor Perry.
If I could, just as a suggestion, I don't know, or if not, the ones that have the stickers that have been numbered as well, when you go to reorganize to put in the 54, I would think that it'd be proper to put those next and go in order, and then I think that that would be proper, because many counselors have desires and concerns, and they put them up there, and those did not make it up the list. That'll at least put them up in
Sure.
those areas.
We can do that.
Mayor, City Council, yes, we can do that. And I would also recommend just go ahead and amending the motion just a little farther.
Okay.
And go ahead and add the list.
The whole
Add
list.
add the rest of them. We'll do this with one vote.
I'm sorry, I just realized that. You beat me to it.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Mr.
So-
Mayor, I would like to add an amendment to my motion, and that is to also include the full 54 projects on the total ICIP plan.
Okay. And I have a second for that from Councilor Moore. So actually, we have to act on the amendment first. The amendment would be to add all 54 to the resolution. I'm going to ask for a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed, say nay. Hearing none, passes 9-0. We're now on an amended resolution 20-50 ICIP with the priorities as stated. West 2nd renovation for Roswell PD, Garden Street Bridge project, a variable speed drives for water, the park on Virginia Avenue, and the East McGaffey Street project, in that sequence, if I'm not mistaken, plus the additional other projects totaling 54. Any further discussion or debate? Otherwise, I'll ask for a voice vote. A yes or aye approves Resolution 20-50. A no or nay rejects it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, passes 9-0. That was an interesting exercise, Mr. Neb.
Thank you.
And counselors, I'll ask you all to kind of chew on this. And if you think this is the way we want to go, Counselor Oropesa.
Mr. Mayor, just a point of clarification, or not a point of clarification, clarification as far as the list is concerned. Are we doing away with the 300 list that we had, the master list?
No. No, sir. This is a modified list off the master project list, only for legislative assistance. So we do have the other list that the city council will determine if there's any projects on there as funding comes available to add to the budget. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
thank you.
Okay. So let's chew on this, folks, and let Mr. Neb know if this is the way we want to proceed with this in the future. On that note, I will move on to item number 4, Counselor Perry.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve dissolving furloughs through December 2020.
I have a motion by Counselor Perry and a second by Counselor Best to dissolve furloughs through 2020. Mr. Neb.
Mayor, City Council, just so that you're aware, this affects the furloughs that for September and October. We actually had no furloughs scheduled for November and December because of the holidays, because we did 10 out of the 12 months, if you remember, in those budget conversations. So, but this does take us through the end of the year. So as we progress through the year, if the finances stay acceptable and everything, then we can consider the remainder of this furloughs from January to June of next year. So I'll stand for any questions with.
Any questions for Mr. Neb?
I have one.
Counselor
Mr.
Stubbs.
Mayor, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I appreciate that. This does say that if we approve it tonight, it'll be presented at the full council as a budget amendment. So will there actually be a resolution created now, or what is going to be the process?
We will have to do a budget amendment because our current budget has those numbers out of it, so we will now have to put those numbers back in. So it'll be through a bar, it'll be through a budget adjustment.
But we have to do a resolution
It'll be
still
by resolution, I believe.
to local governments. Okay. So, I'm just wondering what to do if we're making a recommendation to ourselves to put it on the agenda, or Or are you just going to create an or a resolution, or just?
Mr. Patterson, do we need a formal, I know that we'll have to have a formal document for DFA
Right.
in order to do the budget adjustment. Can we prepare a resolution accordingly from this decision?
Yeah, I mean, right now, the council's just directing you in the exercise of your discretion, and then you can come back at a subsequent time with an official resolution that amends the budget to reflect that.
Okay. So the
What?
decision tonight will remove the furloughs through the end of the year. Again, because it's not, we don't work off of month-by-month budgets.
Right.
We will come back at a later date with a budget adjustment, and these will be included in that budget adjustment resolution.
Okay, because, Mr. Mayor, I just, this again, a personal thing is I really don't like to do these things without resolutions, because if you need to go back for something, you don't know what month it was. We have a, list of resolutions.
Yeah.
It's much easier to do it that way, and like you say, DFA will require it for a budget adjustment.
Certainly.
So
Yeah,
I just
and
wanted
Mayor
to be
and City
clear.
Council, I know Finance talked about it today at the Finance Committee meeting this morning, so I believe that there was a crossing of activity. So I appreciate what you're saying, yes.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this direction to the city manager to prepare a bar? Councilor Roebuck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Joe, if we decide that we want to cancel further furloughs, we'll have to go through this whole process again in December. Is that the thought?
Correct. Yeah, or at any point in time. The whole thing, and this goes into the conversation for the next topic as well, too. We're watching the GRT numbers as they come in each month, and we're basing our adjustments to the budget based upon how the GRT is coming in. We've been very, very good for July and August. We hope that continues. We don't know when the downturn will occur or what shape it will look in. And so at that point in time, we will bring back through the Finance Committee, and we'll try to do the next one just via resolution, just in that manner, because I really want to get it in the committee's hands and then to the City Council. So it'll be normal, regular action. If the numbers look better through the next couple months, that resolution may come forward earlier for conversation with the Finance Committee.
And we do those budget resolutions every month anyway.
Yeah.
The adjustments, that's a part of our standard procedure now on
Yeah,
Finance
this
Committee, so-
DFA requires budget adjustments on a regular basis for how the money is moving now.
Right, so that's part of our, normally it's a housekeeping item, but
Correct.
I appreciate us doing it this way. It keeps it a little cleaner, but thank you.
Councilor Foster. And then, and Councilor Orpesa. Councilor Foster and then Councilor Orpesa.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is, one of the things, just because we don't have numbers on this, and we've talked earlier, but approximately how much is a furlough day cost us?
Each month for the city organization, and this is what we put into the budget, is $160,000. So if you figure that based upon the number of months, I believe we're counting September, we have $1.2 million of furloughs that are still built out there for that 160 all the way through June, not counting November and December.
And so with this recent 5.5 CARES Act that we got, and you said 1.2, so right now we're dealing with about 320,000 with September and October. We're talking at this.
Correct.
But if we expanded it, it'd go to about the 1.2 or 1.28. Or 1.3 actually,
through
closer
June,
to
yes.
1.3. So, and that's where I'm at the point where I think we have more breathing room now, and I would actually like to make a motion, Mayor, that up for discussion to go ahead and move it all the way through to the end of the year to June. So, Mayor, I'd make a motion that we delete all furloughs for year 2021.
I have a motion to amend to delete all furloughs through fiscal year 2021. I have a second from Counselor, oh, all right, let me see if we have a second on that. I have a second by Counselor Roebuck to amend the direction to delete all furloughs. You want to add anything more to that? You still have the floor on.
All right. I'm just thinking that this is one of those things to let our staff know that, you know, first of all, that they had to budget it in their budget, and now that it would just give them a little more breathing room to understand that, and not just carry this out every 2 months, that every 2 months keep getting rid of them. And just with that 5.5, and we're talking about 1.3, and with our GRT being up by 2.3 already, plus the fact we've already built in the 3/12 into this budget, I think that it's at a time where we can be a little more comfortable. So,
All right, thank you. I have Counselor Oropesa, then Counselor Best.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want a matter of clarification on item 4, and it looks like item 4 is also addressed on item 5, to eliminate all furloughs.
Now, the item 5 is to direct the priorities should revenues continue to come in, that this would be the first thing that would be replaced, be eliminated would be the furloughs. The second thing would be the reinstatement of the step increases which were deferred. And then third, to expend on facilities. In other words, to give this city manager direction on where to focus the revenues should they come in. What we're doing here is actually giving him exact direction to eliminate all now.
Okay,
Not in the future, but now.
So item 5, I guess we can eliminate that wording as far as furloughs are concerned?
If this passes, the first part would become moot. You're correct. It would
Okay.
become unnecessary.
All right, thank you.
All right. Now, I have Counselor Best.
Okay, my comment is on the amendment that Barry just made. I'm scared the Queen up north, Wicked Witch to the west, is going to either keep us where we are or shut us down even more once the herd immunity doesn't level out to where she thinks it does. So I think if we do the amendment, I understand you're giving hope to the employees. I understand that. But as a business decision, we need to keep that tool in our toolbox in case we need it. It's my opinion. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else wishing to speak? Counselor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just say that I just don't want to have a situation where we've had to see, unfortunately, like with the restaurants, where we've given the ability to, where there was an ability to reopen, and then because of the illness, the virus growing or whatever it may be, having to shut down again. I would rather be on the side of caution and be able to, with 100% guarantee, know that we can give our employees what we're wanting to do for them. This gets them through, granted it is September, October, but it gets them through December, knowing that much. That gets them through the Christmas. And I'm hoping that we see from Mr. Fuentes and the other ones that they'll be able to look and to be able to calculate and do some predictions that will give us full assurance to be able to move forward with the months past that. So I would like to consider us staying with the original intent.
All right. Counselor Roebuck, you have the floor.
Joe, I want to put you in the hot seat for a second,
Yes,
if you don't
sir.
mind, because I'm really curious about your opinion on this. What are the pros and cons of canceling the rest of the, in your opinion?
You know, Mayor, City Council, we set this budget with the worst-case scenario, and we released, we actually allowed more employees to voluntarily separate than what we intended earlier. That provided some savings. I think Councilor Foster is correct that we have the CARES Act money now that can go into that. We have the 3/12s. We have all of that in there. I think that my request for the consideration is that There is nothing to stop us to putting furloughs back if we have to, if the numbers look bad. I think there is something to be said for the employees to not have to worry about this on the plate again, because as you look at number 5, it is the prioritization of bringing other pieces back. There's a conversation I know from some of you about step increases of supervisors and up, and so I guess I'm very appreciative of looking at going in and putting the furloughs off and taking them off the plate as a chip in this whole playing deck. It's just, I believe that what we're seeing is very well at $160,000 a month. We haven't even enacted all of the work that our department heads are doing on pulling back costs as well too. And so I think we're seeing some magic happen. And so I would just recommend, and coming back, since you put me on the hot seat, I wanted to make sure I shared enough of that. My recommendation, of course, is to go ahead and honor the amendment.
Okay. Yeah, and just for clarification, that it is most likely that some of that CARES money will go to help pay these salaries. I mean, that's what it was intended for.
The
correct?
5.5 million, yeah, and Mr. Fuentes will give a short report on that because we're talking about all of that, how we're going to utilize that money next week. The majority of that money was put in there for police and fire salaries associated with first responders, essentially associated with our response to the CARES, to the COVID pandemic. So that money can go into helping, assisting on that side. It really becomes that nuts and bolts in the details as to what that money can kind of cover and how much it can salvage out of our current budget based upon COVID.
And it just helped refresh my memory. What percentage of our salary base is police and fire? Roughly? 2/3, a third, half?
Fire department is right at 9 million for the year, a little over, and so we have a $100 million budget,
Okay.
plus or minus. So right at 10%.
Okay, so I mean, realistically, the CARES Act would absorb nearly $1 million easily with just into salaries alone, at least.
And the CARES Act,
Okay.
that money is predominantly police and fire from this point forward through December, based upon our response of how we're trying to help with COVID.
Okay. I yield, thank you.
Okay. I have no one else on my list. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote on this amendment. So, councilors, what this will be is to a yes or aye eliminates furloughs through the end of the fiscal year. That is June of 2021. A no or nay keeps the direction as it currently stands with furloughs ending December of 2020. Once again, a yes eliminates all furloughs for the entire fiscal year. A no retains the current wording, which only eliminates them through December. So, Ms. Call, please call the roll.
Counselor Perry?
No.
Counselor Robeck?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
No.
Counselor Best?
No.
Counselor Stubbs?
No.
Counselor Kinnock?
No.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
No.
Thank you. Counselor Sanchez? Counselor Foster?
Yes.
Counselor Oropesa?
Yes.
Motion fails.
All right, we are back with the unamended direction, which would take furloughs through, which would eliminate furloughs through December of 2020. Any further discussion or debate? Councilor Foster, you have the floor.
For a matter of point, I do not like the way we have this advertised because we don't have furloughs in November or December. So, and that's, I have an objection to vote for something that, I mean, we just have it for September and October, that this is all that it's doing. So I hate to, but I know how, that's how it's advertised, but I do not like how some things just look dishonest. And to me, it's dishonest to say we're getting rid of them through December. We're only getting rid of them through October. We have none to get rid of in November and December. Just
Okay.
wanted to make that statement. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments on the direction? A yes or aye approves the directive to eliminate furloughs or dissolve furloughs as it's worded through December 2020. A no or nay retains the furloughs in place as currently budgeted. I'm going to do a voice vote on this. So all those in favor of eliminating or dissolving furloughs through December 2020 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, passes 9-0. Next up is item number 5. Councilor Perry.
I'm going to, I struggle with how to word this. I'll just use it as a reading point. I make a motion that we direct the city manager that should actual revenue for fiscal year 2021 continue to exceed budget revenue, that the priorities for these funds shall be the first to eliminate all furloughs, second, reinstate step increase for all personnel, and third, for staff to present a list of facility and/or equipment expenditures for future consideration by the governing body.
I have a motion by Councilor Perry to give direction to the city manager as stated. Do I have a second? I have a second from Councilor Oropesa. All right, Mr. Nebb.
Yeah, Mayor, City Council. Again, this follows along the lines of just trying to provide guidance to staff as to what is the most important, what your vision is for all these activities. I would state that while we're looking at trying to help prioritize how we would, if we have additional revenue would come in, I believe that any changes to the budget would still need to come back to the City Council. So what would happen with this information is that we would follow that prioritizing, and so we would prepare a resolution accordingly if we see that the revenues are exceeding what our estimate is, and it would come forward to Finance Committee for an adjustment to that budget at that point in time. So that is how we would actually utilize this information and this guidance from the City Council. And then we would just prepare accordingly so that you have the information you need to take action at a later date for that process.
All right, Council, let's be candid. This is my fault. And I use that word deliberately because the discussions myself and the city manager have had deal with the revenues coming in higher than expected. And what does that mean to staff? How are they to plan? In many ways, I will tell you from my experience in the legislature and here in the council, having more money than expected is worse than having less money. Because when you have less money, it's easy to say no to everybody. Now, this council will have to do the heavy lifting, make the hard decisions. What are going to be the priorities? Because we're not going to make every department or every entity happy. The way this is worded is a concept that I've asked to have presented, that the first things we do is eliminate all furloughs should the funding resume. Then some staff, senior staff, were budgeted to not receive step increases. That would be to make them whole next. The more difficult or challenging aspect to this is the third point. I'm not sure we're going to get more money. The CARES Act money is one-time money. And there's no assurance that if we have some good times, that we'll be able to maintain levels of services or programs. So you'll see the wording is to focus on facilities, to fix things. That can be roads, That can be equipment such as cars for the police department. That can be trash trucks. That can be water lines. Things that are firm and hard that we can touch as opposed to bringing back in. Mr. Nebb and staff has done an incredible job adjusting the staffing and service levels within this city. I think they've done incredible. And the reality is they've had to deal with internal discussions, I'll use that as a polite word, on what is a priority and, well, this program shouldn't be cut, or well, this staffing needs to be enhanced, or we need to add a person here, we need to add a person there. I think we need to give clear direction to Mr. Nebb, staff, basically say, let's fix everything that's broken first before we do any additional programming or staff enhancements. So that is, like I said, this is my fault, and as we all know, I don't have a vote. I have Councilor Oropesa and then Councilor Best.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to be clear, is this one saying that we're going to leave it up to you if indeed there is enough revenue coming in to give the operational on people their step increase?
Mayor, City Council, I struggle with exactly how to answer that because I don't want to take your responsibilities away from you. I think it's supposed to make it easier in order to know what is the priorities as we walk through this. I still believe you will have to take some type of an action through the budget adjustment once I present and say, I believe we can now hold our heads above water to this level. Please look at adjusting the step increases and of that nature. So
well,
I don't think it gives me the autonomy to go ahead and do that action myself.
Okay. Well, because that's the way I understand it. But the other question that I really have is, if indeed we continue to receive revenue and we decide to implement the step increase, is that going to be done retroactive to when they were supposed to get it, or is it going to be at the point that
Thank you.
the decision is made?
Mayor, City Council, the way our compensation classification plan works, we adjust the scale every July for cost of living adjustment. So that's based upon inflation. All employees receive that because it's actually a scale adjustment. So all of our starting wages and all the wages across the thing was changed by 1.6% this year in order to bring the scale, keep the scale current. We do step increases in December of each year. And so the first pay in December is affected by the step increases that are initiated for that year. Step increases are 2% of the salary, and that just moves you up the scale. There is nobody that has been negatively impacted by the step increases as of today. If we go beyond December of this year, December 2020, and the budget remains where it's at, that is when the supervisors and above will see the impact of not receiving that 2% increase at that point in time. Does that help answer? There's nobody that's been negatively impacted, so there is no need to retroactively move backwards. And actually, I believe Mr. Patterson would say we don't ever want to retroactively do those types of things because it turns into some other violations. If the City Council was not to take action before December, then there would be an impact to the supervisors and up individuals. But right now, there's nobody that has been truly negatively impacted by the step increases because they have not occurred yet.
But the thing is that if you determine sometime in March, April, that we are receiving enough in JRT to be able to give the step increase,
Yes, sir.
is that going to go back to December, or is it going to be effective the date that the
Thank
determination
you.
is made?
Mayor, City Council, it would not go retroactively from that point because that money was not available at the time for that. It would start at that point forward. And so we would, if we decide in March that there's enough money in order to initiate step increases for those that were removed out of the budget, we would not go back to December and take care of those months.
And just to say, that would most likely be illegal.
You're not allowed to retroactively pay, is the challenge we have with New Mexico law, and so it has to start from the day that it is provided, and so that's the way we would have to work it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I've got Counselor Best and Counselor Kennard. Counselor Best, you have the floor.
Okay, I'm just going to stir the pot a little bit here. This has nothing to do with what we're talking about. This has everything to do with, I understand the mayor's allowed to put stuff on the agenda. I get it. There wasn't an abstract explaining anything pertaining to this, so I went into this cold again. So I'm at a meeting where I've gone into quite a few things cold. As said, we have to make hard decisions, you know, so sitting up here, we make the hard decision and throw it that way. This usually seems to be a problem with one or two of the counselors up here every time it comes along. For some reason, this isn't this time since it has to do with payroll. But I would like an abstract. When you add something, Mayor, please, I would like an abstract. I mean, just give me something to think on since I do attack this 3 days ahead of time, please.
Okay,
Thank you.
fair enough. Counselor Kennard, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So my question is, when will we receive the CARES money? I know this doesn't really have anything to do with what we were talking about necessarily, but, and how are we going to determine where it's going to be used?
I think that's
Do you wanna
an excellent
comment on
question.
that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Councilor, so we just received the actual grant agreement and the award letter, which has already been emailed back to the state. I just received an email from the state at 4 o'clock today, notifying all of the recipients that they're going to be providing training to DFA staff on properly managing these funds, as well as setting up training with those grant recipients. Because we're dealing with federal money, there's going to be a lot of reporting requirements, documentations that we will have to be submitting. Part of so once we receive the award letter back, and we know how we need to begin to process and request reimbursements, we'll be able to, one, make sure that we have included in the budget, do another budget amendment so that we can include both the $5.5 million and we also have the $1.3 million. So that will be forthcoming down the road. In looking at some of the grant information that we received, I mean, there are some items that we can, that we'll be able to submit, such as medical expenses, public health expenses, some payroll expenses, as we have already mentioned, and any sort of expenses that we have incurred as a result of us responding to the COVID-related activities. But again, part of the training that they're going to be providing, making sure we're all clear as to what needs to be submitted and what we can provide, request reimbursement for. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to be left with not being able to get reimbursed and take the benefit of the full grant awarded amount. So once we get that training, and we'll be able to kind of better manage the grant award that we received.
You got it.
So I have another concern about that. So there's a potential that we won't receive that full amount. That is what is allotted to us, that we can't, the 5.5, right? So there might be, we might not qualify for all that.
No, no. The actual award has already been awarded to us for $5.5 million. So we're going to be able to draw down on that full amount.
Okay.
I just wanted to make clear, but again, we have to make sure we submit the proper documentation, and that's the reason for the training. Not only for the DFA staff, because they're the ones who are the fiscal agent for the federal money, but also to the local entities who receive the money. So it's going to be on us to make sure we submit the full 5.5 on those eligible expenses according to the grant, the guidelines that are set in this allocation.
Thank you.
Okay. On that, just clarification. This is reimbursement. In other words, we will submit to DFA expenditures that we believe are qualified. They will say, if it's yes, they will then send us the actual dollars. We don't have a check in the city's bank account right now, correct?
That is correct. The period for this grant, it's covering going back to March 1st of 2020 all the way to December of 2020. So any eligible expenses from March up until today, we'll be able to submit for reimbursement, but this is on a reimbursement basis, even moving forward until December.
Okay. I have Councilor Perry. Councilor
Yes,
Perry, you have the floor.
Mr. Fuentes, just a quick question. Is there a process or the ability to challenge or question the grading criteria for how these funds have been dispersed amongst the state? As I've looked at other communities and their receivings versus ours, and you look at their size population and ours, their number of cases versus ours, those kind of things, I'm struggling to understand what their grading criteria was, because we're significantly left hanging with much less than some of those other communities per capita. Is there the ability for any of that?
Mr. Mayor and Councilor Perry, I am not aware of any process that we can challenge the scoring, since the awards have already been issued by the state to all of the communities, so the money to some extent has already been allocated. But if there is something that comes up along the way as we get that training, I will certainly communicate that to Joe and the council.
Okay. I just think that's something we need to maybe keep our ear to the ground on. Thank you.
All right. I have Councilor Stubbs and Councilor Roebuck. Councilor Stubbs, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the language of this item bothers me as well. So what I'd like to figure out is exactly what we're doing here. And from what I understand, and forgive me, we're asking, not directing. That's a little, anyway. The city manager to start looking at where we might be able to extend certain expenses if in fact revenue continues to be better than we predicted. Is that?
Yes.
Not a fair, okay.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that bothers me is, if I'm wrong, correct me, but we only have 2 checks into this fiscal year, July and August. So we're looking at predicting what's going to happen for 10 months by what we have for only 2, which bothers me a little bit. I just hate, I think it's too soon in the fiscal year to really predict what's going to happen as we continue through.
Can I address that?
I beg your pardon?
Can I address that? Because the intention here is to say, if things continue to do well, these are the priorities.
Right.
This is the number 1 priority that the staff should look at: eliminating all furloughs, then putting in step increases. So we're not taking action except for giving him direction. This is what the will of the council is. This is where, if we get monies in, and if the CARES Act funds come in and we reimburse expenses we've already got, that's money that goes into the general fund. So that's the intention, to give direction to him to what does he bring to us for a, what's he supposed to do with it? That's the objective.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what I think the piece that we're leaving out of this is staff's ability to look at everything that may be needed. We pared the budget in every possible way this last time, and I don't want to say that these aren't the important priorities, but I think we should allow staff to look at everything that they've looked at. I mean, like I say, we don't know what's going to happen in the next few months, and so I'd like the idea of what we're asking to be a little more broad at this point in time, I guess.
Okay, thank you. I have Counselor Roebuck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This city every year deals with either ends up with more money or less money than it budgeted, and it's not. This has happened before both ways. I don't. This doesn't like scare me. I don't think it's going to cause any problems, but at the same time, I don't really see the need for it, especially not. I really think it should go. If there's not an urgency for it, I think it should go through a committee to really address those wording issues. I'm not gonna move to table it to a committee, but if somebody else did, I would support it. To support that. I appreciate the concept here, but it's the continue to exceed budgeted revenue. I mean, if we can do that by technical thing, that means the next time we get a check, and if it happens to be over projected revenue, then we've continued to exceed it, even if it's over $1. So obviously, you're not going to interpret literally because you're not a fool, but the language doesn't necessarily give you that kind of room either. So, and it does just basically kind of leave us where we already are, which is that if we if we look like we're going to have more money, you're going to come back to us anyway and say, hey, this is how I'd like to spend the additional money. I don't see the need. I don't see the harm in this because it's like you already mentioned that it's going to have to go. Anything that you recommend is going to have to go through the budgeting process anyway. But I don't see the need for it either at this point. Those are my two thoughts on it. Thank you.
Okay, I have Counselor Best, and that exhausts my list.
Okay, I don't see the need for it either. Ms. Call, do we have a committee meeting before Thursday? We have no meetings coming up whatsoever. No legal, no nothing. Okay. Yeah, finance just finished. I almost want to table it and send it, and I think public service is the next one.
Counselor
right?
Best, that's correct. Public safety would be the
Public
next
safety.
meeting. Yes.
So can we table it and send it to public safety? Well, it doesn't matter, you've got a whole month, so you can actually go to legal with it, and Judy could wordsmith it.
Correct.
So
You
we
could
have an
take it-
abstract.
Correct. You could take it to any of the 5 committees because it would come back around to the council in October.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to table this and send it to legal for our next city council meeting, which would be October.
Okay.
It's not a rush to do this or anything, so I think that would be fair.
I have a motion to table by Counselor Best and a second by Counselor Roebuck. Oh, Foster, excuse me, I apologize. Motion to second is by Counselor Foster. A motion to table is a debatable motion. Is there anyone wishing to discuss this? Counselor Foster.
Well, my worry, and that's one of the reasons I put my name on the list after Counselor Best, is I don't like the fact that if we vote no on this, how does that bind Joe's hands to not be able to do what we need him to be able to do? And that's my whole problem with the way this is. If we vote no and get rid of this, then that means he can't bring this to us because we've already said he can't with our rules. And so that's one of the reasons why I support the tabling.
Okay, on the motion to table, Counselor Perry.
Just clarification, do we table and send to the committee, or do we just send to committee? I think we just
We're
send. to
tabling
committee.
it tonight. We're not taking any further action on tonight. So the tabling to go to committee and then
I
go.
would thought that tabling would keep it here.
Is that correct, you guys? A motion to table is distinct from a motion to send something to a committee. They're two different motions. So if you want to direct it to legal, that's the motion you should make. Don't call it a
Correct.
table.
Okay. All right, we have a substitute motion, a motion to send this directive to legal committee. And a
Also,
second.
for future reference, motion to lay on the table is not debatable.
All right, I was under the impression it was. I thought we'd had this discussion before.
I'm looking at Robert's rules right now. It says it's undebatable.
All right. Thank you very much. Now, we're on a debatable motion. All right. Counselor Best and Counselor, second by Foster, to send this to legal committee at the next meeting. Any further discussion on that action, proposed action? If not, I'll ask for a voice vote. A yes or aye sends item 5 to legal committee for their next meeting. A no or nay keeps it before us this evening. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
Nay.
I have a nay by Counselor Oropesa. It passes 8-1.
And Counselor Sanchez as well.
I'm sorry, I did not hear. Well, 7-2. Counselor Oropesa and Counselor Sanchez. All right. That brings us up to item number 6.
All
Mr.
right,
Deb.
Mayor, City Council, thank you for tonight. I appreciate all the work and everything, and so we do have a council meeting next week on Thursday to cover everything that went through our committees. If you haven't seen it yet, there is a new public health order out. There have been some changes in the executive order as well. Changes to the self-quarantining based upon the positivity rates of those travelers coming in. If they're coming from a state that has a positivity rate less than 5, then that reduces the 14-day stay or self-quarantine. And if it's over 5, then that maintains that 14-day. Hotels that are, I believe, that are certified safe, or New Mexico True, whatever the term that they're using, that are certified by the state, are allowed to change their percentage of occupancy. So just so you're aware of those things. And I believe Mr. Fuentes covered the CARES Act. If you have any other questions on that, we can do that. But as we get more information, we can bring that back in as part of a presentation next week as well.
On the CARES Act, Mr. Fuentes mentioned this. There's actually 2 parts or 2 allocations. There's the 5.56 for the city of Roswell and about a 1.37 million for small business. And the county also got, I think, about 340,000 for the small business. Now, this is something, if I remember, Mr. Nebb, you and Mr. Riggs from the county and Mr. Espiritu from EDC worked on diligently to put it in.
Yes, sir.
And do you want to touch a little bit on where that effort is?
Yes, sir. Mayor, City Council, again, when we were given the directive from the state to put together what was necessary for the CARES Act, we did that together with the EDC in Chavez County. We came together, we discussed what the needs of our businesses, of our people and everything, and then we put together our packages accordingly. I think going back to something Councilor Perry had said, and it was talked about today at the Municipal League, that there is a disparity within the division of that funding. I expect that some communities, if they weren't provided additional guidance, they followed the letter of the language, and they were essentially they received less than that population base. The nice thing is that the mayor is on calls every week with the mayor's caucus, with the municipal league, and that information there, we got additional guidance from DFA, I believe, or Tax and Rev, one of the two, that said we need to put in all of our salaries through the month, through the end of December, and that's why we put in a $12 million request. And of course, we got 5.5 million out of that request. Some of the cities, some of the counties did not do that, and I think that's why Chavez County actually did a little bit different in their criteria as well too, because they didn't get that guidance as well. So I expect that there will be some conversation on that, but we are meeting next week with the EDC in Chavez County on this money, because we want to work hand in hand to make sure that our businesses in the city and in the region within the county are taken care of. And so we are going to work as close as we can with that and try to help each other so that we can move this thing together. And EDC has been very helpful for that. They have been a good repository of information of our business community, and we do appreciate that.
So are we going to be able to get some kind of update by next Thursday, or do you think that's going to be too soon?
I think it's going to be based a lot upon the training that we have to receive for the detail, but we are meeting next week. I will give another update on Thursday as to how the conversation goes, because I've seen some of the other cities have put together their own kind of criteria as to how this funds would be utilized for the small businesses, and so we'll be talking about that next week.
Okay. Yeah, and I understand it's moving fast, and I don't expect miracles, but I want this body to be brought up to speed as much as possible. So target the October council meeting with a more in-depth breakdown. Hopefully by then we can explain exactly how all these monies, both the 5.56 for the city and the 1.37 for small business, are going to be dispersed.
Yes, sir, we will do that. And,
Okay. So, Councilor Perry.
Just one thing before we leave. They did have the Municipal League
Annual meeting.
Annual meeting through the internet. And I just wanted to congratulate Councilor Stubbs. She's been elected as the New Mexico Municipal League Treasurer.
Whoa.
And just want to congratulate her tonight.
Can I have, never mind.
I believe that means she's in charge of the checkbook?
Yep.
All right.
All right, any other questions or comments for Mr. Nebb at this point? I have, the time is 6:53. We are adjourned.